Hey, Andy.
Hello, and welcome back to AJ Paints. I'm Andy. If you watched my last video, you'll have seen the story of how I was given the absolute privilege of painting the new miniatures for Battle Systems' Maladum Dungeons of Enron game, the expansion, the Ermek Horde. Well, it's not called the Ermek Horde, but look at them, they're definitely a horde. All these little guys, they're miniatures that I painted. It's so weird seeing them in the official photos all over the website. But that's not the whole story. As you can see here, not just the Ermek in the new pictures, we've got some heroes and some fantastic looking mounts as well. These all come in the Riders of Hyberia expansion, and I'm going to take you along with me and show you how I painted the heroes and the mounts. First off, getting these packages from Battle Systems is absolutely brilliant, so exciting, but also pretty scary to be honest. The characters are always going to be a big focus of any of the work that you see, any of the photos, the stuff in the manuals. They're going to be right there front and centre. So I needed to be really careful that I did a good job on these. Anyway, checking them out, looking at them, comparing them to the artwork is the first part of the process. You can see Rex here as I turn him around. He's got these fantastic sort of damaged section on the back of his coat, which isn't in the artwork, so that was something that I needed to work out how to do. Got this character, so many guns, all the arms, great callbacks to core space there, lots of non-metallic metal looking work needed to be done there. Anyway, as always, base coat them in black and I got started. It's my first brush coats with my cheap nylon brush, synthetic brush, getting some burnt red on there for the cloak. And you can see here, my painting style is different when I'm working on these kinds of miniatures. I'm going really fine, as detailed as I can. I'm not the best blender of colours, but I think I'm quite good at getting the texture on. So these very small brush strokes, little marks, really help to sell the idea of blending whilst giving a bit of texture too. Anyway, take a look. You can see from my wet palette behind that I've been working a section at a time, starting off with the cloak, gradually blending that up. You can just about see the colours there, going through that tunic that he's wearing, and now onto the skin, and again you can see the colours blending up there. I find the wet palette absolutely invaluable for this kind of work. I'll do a few hours, put the lid back on, leave it for the next day, and all the colours are set and ready. The face is a real focal point of any miniature, and I'm really pushing the contrast here, trying to get the brightest colours I can get with the darkest shadows to make the face look really dramatic, stand out as much as possible. You can see here, getting towards the end of the miniature now, it was a good solid day's work I think, this one, and it was really nice to do. I picked this one to start with because it was probably the most straightforward of all of the miniatures. There were no weird textures or unusual techniques that I needed to use. And the final thing I was very happy with. Comparing it with the artwork, that's looking pretty good. I had to change the eyes. The eyes on the original artwork are fully black with yellow pupils, and that was quite difficult to show on the final miniature. Anyway, I gave it a try, gave it the normal looking eyes, it looks okay. Now moving on to Rex, I thought Rex was probably the next hardest one to paint. Lots of standard things on here, standard textures and things, but there was some stuff on the back of his coat, his blast-proof area that I needed to work on. I needed to have a conversation with Colin about that actually, to try to work out what that was going to look like. The reason I'm showing this one to you mainly is because you can see the wet palette, and you'll notice that on my palette it's the same. I've not changed it between the two figures, and that allows me to pick up some of the colours that I've previously mixed. One of my considerations, well, smaller consideration, but one of my considerations was for when people are going to paint these afterwards, to try to limit the number of colours a little bit. So some of the basic shades of the reds and some of the tunic colours there, I've used fairly similar ones. This is much further on in the process now. You can see a lot of the shading, the texturing has been done. His face is looking good. I'm just working in to blend up the leather now. I like to use skin tones to blend up the leather, make it look good, and try to get some variety in the leather colours as well. You can see there's a little bit of interpretation there from the original artwork, especially around the collars, but I was really pleased with how this guy turned out. We've got a bit of a time jump here. You can usually tell because my palette looks absolutely disgusting. It's super full there. And we're looking at Aurora, the four-armed character in the middle. I've picked this point to show you because a lot of the Aurora stuff that I've painted up to this point is just the same as the others, basic textures and things. But the big challenge on this character was the non-metallic metal. There's lots of brass on the character's guns. Loads of guns, so many guns. Colin was telling me that he just had to keep asking the sculptor to add more guns, and there's loads on there. It looks really cool, but it's a challenge to paint, so I'll take you through the process for that. Starting off with a lovely rich dark chocolatey brown for the base, because the trick to non-metallic metal, I'm going to say the trick, I'm no expert, but what I found looks good is really high contrast from the darkest darks to the brightest brights. So building up through ochre yellow colours, the sort of brown yellow, and then pushing towards lighter yellows. I like to use ice yellow as a final highlight, but there's some bismuth yellow in here, which is a really yellow. I think it's a Rogue Hobbies Pro Acryl colour. And then the final highlights make them super small, but as bright as possible. And like I said, ice yellow is a great one for that. Another key thing is getting the final highlights, the absolute brightest ones, as small as you can. You're trying to get a real range of tones from the darkest to the lightest in just a millimetre or two to sell the idea that these are very reflective. There's the final one. I'm happy with that. The barrel on the long gun was the hardest thing to do. Still not completely convinced I've got that right, but it looks okay. Moving on now to Aurora. I left her till last because she was so challenging. Great looking character, absolutely fantastic, but look at those glowing hammers. They look amazing on the artwork, and that red glow around the outside sells that idea that they are glowing white hot metal. That's tricky to do on a miniature, and this was my first pass. You can see it's looking okay. I've tried on the left hand one of these hammers to get that bright white core, and then as the metal cools down it gets a little bit darker. I shared that with Colin. You can see here, this is the messages that we sent to each other, and Colin is fantastic at giving me feedback. So like he said here, get some more contrast into it. It looks like a big yellow blob. The OSL was a bit strong. I changed it, I toned it down. I went for more orange on the clothes, and I suggested to Colin that we go for some patches of different coloured metals in there, sort of like pools of slightly cooler metal in the floating molten areas, and that was approved. So I went on and did the second one, the second hammer. I painted a lot of this in my head first. I do that a lot when I'm planning out these things. Rather than committing paint to the miniature, I will sit and work things out. I looked at a lot of picture reference of molten metal, and by the time I'd done that first one on that left hand side, I was feeling a lot more confident. And the process here, you can see, is building up. So starting from, I think it's burnt red, an AK colour, and then working up through the brightest yellows I could get. Again, on the wet palette you can see there's a real range of colours on there, but trying to find bright yellows, bright oranges, and then work in so that there's still darker colours left on the edges as the metal's cooling down, and then the brightest, trying to find where the core of the metal is. And you can see there really clearly the sort of floating lighter areas, almost like a magma pool or something. Adding cast light to her trousers, to her tunic, and particularly to her gloves and the belt buckles was really important here to show that idea of the reflections. You can see really clearly on the belt buckles where they're reflecting yellow at the bottom and then a white colour at the top from daylight, I suppose. With the heroes done, it was time to move on to the mounts. This next section's a bit more like a vlog really. There's lots of commentary that I did while I was painting and unboxing, so I thought I'd leave that in for you to have a listen to. Oh, here we go. That is a full-on tree monster. This has got to be the chunkiest Battle Systems miniature there has ever been. Look at his little face. Look at that. We're looking forward to this one. Just because the artwork looks so cool. It's got this funny sort of beard, like a bearded dragon. Very cool. So you can see it's set over to one side here. So my understanding is that if your characters are riding on, that you just pop the mini on the side like that, and then those two are now together. So, wow, that looks great. That looks really cool. Yeah. Absolutely gigantic. Look at that. She could just about pop on the side there though, look. And then they're in a little pose together. I think that probably looks better. Yeah. Over there it looks like it's just looking away. I think that's a better pose. It's like a bluey colour, this one. The beaky bit here is sort of reds and yellows. Nice slightly purpley blue on here. And then pick out some little feathers on there. So a quick bit of clean up. And that looks like it's looking straight forwards. So I think ooh, yeah, don't know which side that's going to go. Okay, so there we are. New Riding Beasts. Little last look before I clean them up. Get them primed, get a look at the original artwork, and we'll get painting. I've got a short deadline on these. Need to get them done in a couple of weeks. Going to be some busy evenings, I think, for me. Oh yeah, and super glue for this little dude. Okay. All right, just received this one, an updated version of this big chunky boy. So this is the original. Got his horn broken off. This one has been de-chunkified. Still really massive, but that tucks in. I think they look awesome actually. They look really cool together. So I think they look great on the table. Way! Exciting times. And with that minor mishap aside, it was painting time. As you can see, I've got into the airbrush for this. Larger miniatures, I prefer to set the tones really and the values with the airbrush first. So going in with bluish colour on this one, going in with my beiges, ivory tones on this one, and then gradually blending up gives me a great starting point. My plan was always to dry brush these. So fixing these bits first and then dry brushing over the top made the basic painting of these quite quick, and it meant I could spend a bit more time focusing on some of the details like the saddles and the teeth and the spots on this guy. All these minis got a dry brush, but it's most obvious I think on this one, the beaky griffin looking thing. Picking out the feathers was very easy with a dry brush, just to get the basic tones on there. It really helped on that. This one, the artwork showed a really unusual thing. In between the scales, actually the skin underneath the scales was lighter. So I mixed a wash with a paler colour and put that all over the mini, and then went back over and dry brushed with a darker colour on the top. Now this was the most interesting one for me, the tree sort of monster, and I'm using an oil wash here. Don't use oil washes very often, but you can get great effects with oil washes, and I was able to push my boundaries a little bit with that. Once I'd done all those basic colour settings and got the washes and dry brushes and things done, it was time to start on the real work, which is getting the details painted in. A couple of shots of painting saddles here. All of these characters, all of these mounts I should say, have got saddles and they're all slightly different. This one's got a beautiful sleeping roll. In fact, I think they've all got sleeping rolls on the back. It's nice to break out some different colours, some lovely purples and pinks on this one. And it was excellent fun to paint the horns on this character, that lovely turquoise colour blended up. They're quite smooth on the miniature, but it was nice to paint some texture in. You can see here breaking out the small brush to go back in and get the fur texture. Now back to the tree monster. One of the delights on this one is all of the glowing parts. It was nice to set those initially with the airbrush and then come in with some really bright fluorescent colours. These little mushrooms on the back I thought they needed to look a bit spotty. Mushrooms look good when they've got dots on them, I think. So it was nice to build up a little bit of extra colour on there. Anyway, these are basically done, so it's time to move on to the bases. I thought I'd sneak in some classic AJ Paints basing techniques here. If you've watched any of my other videos, I always use P3 Iron Hull Grey. So all of these have got P3 Iron Hull Grey as the main base. It blends into a dark green colour. Setting the pattern for the flagstones, I'd actually sent off all of my other miniatures at this point, so I went back to one of my Rogue Purge, and I thought this was a sneaky little Easter egg. I used that Rogue Purge character to set the basic grid pattern, particularly on this one, and I found it really helpful to draw out with a pencil first, and then go in with a fine brush and paint the basic flagstone patterns in. So I went for the flagstone outlines first, and then painted in a set of cracks. Things to make the base look interesting. It's a really big wide base, this one, and although it's going to have characters on it, still you're going to see it sometimes in the photos just on its own with the characters off the base. So making the base look interesting, really important. There is a video on one of my YouTube, I think it's a short, which shows you the basic idea of how I do these bases. Basic idea, huh? Anyway, there it is. You can see I tried to make that fit really nicely. The splodges of blue fit on. So there's a little Easter egg. That's probably the only time that miniature will ever sit on that other miniature's base, but there it is, preserved for posterity, I guess, and for your enjoyment. So no travel montage in this video. I actually posted these ones off to Battle Systems. I was feeling a little bit more confident. It was only a smaller box, and it was really cool to see what Tom and the team had done with the photos that they'd taken. And once I started to see them on the GameFound campaign and promoted all over the website, it was absolutely brilliant. And I love these shots of the miniatures next to the original artwork. Makes me really happy. I've done my best to translate what Nick the artist had put together with his vision with Colin, and tried to translate that into the final miniatures. So here we are. Here's the final show reel of the things that I've painted. It's been an absolute blast painting these. It's been so cool seeing them, and hearing reactions to them has been wonderful. So hopefully I get to do something similar again in the future. In the meantime though, thank you very much for staying with me, and I'll catch you in the next video.